adding the voice, and I'll hope that it all goes into the experiment. So those are the boundaries of the recording. So we're using a test canteen database. Customers with ID, username, full name, menu with ID, nickname, name and then nickname for the item, and root orders. We already run the commands, and when we run them, we have these tables for customer, food, and menu. We are now going to create some functions, but first we use delimiter so that it can actually tell the beginning and an end of the function. Because within a function, we can have semicolons. For example, create function my addition, which takes two variables, x and int, y and int, returns int, begin, end, declare z, int, set z equals to x plus y, return z. Alright. So this is a very simple function, a function that takes two parameters, x and y, returns an int. Select version actually tells you what version of MySQL you are running. You can write code that can test your version before you run certain code. So if you know maybe your version 4.0, you use it. Same also is in PHP. So those of you doing PHP development, version function exists.
How does that mean?
Not the function. That means your code can ask what version of MySQL am I going to put. And you can call one or different functions, depending. Like PHP, there may be different features in different versions of MySQL. So if you know you're using version 1, set it version 2, version 3, and so on. So I'm just printing a version to show you it's possible. So that's just a test. Now, this MySQL function I've written, it's similar to what in Java someone would write int my addition, x int, y int. Alright, so I just try to write Java code so that you can compare. Right? So you can see the returns. This one returns an int. In Java, usually we specify the return type when you're writing a function name. Right. That's why this one has returns int. And of course in Java you can see the declarations. You don't need to say that you're declaring something. But in MySQL you have to say declare, and you are telling me a variable of a certain type. Similar to the way it is in but this doesn't have as. Just say declare int and set. Whenever you are assigning one value to another, you need to use set. The old version of DBMS requires set when you are assigning one variable to another. Now you do the newer version. No, begin is actually your open bracket. Yes, please, and close bracket. Right. So whenever you see begin and end in code, whether VB or SQL script, it's just an open bracket. Equality. Alright, so it's using the context. So if you say set, then it knows that it's actually being assigned. But compilers are very smart. So depending on where the equality is being used, because if you're doing an Ifelse and it sees equality there, it knows that it's doing logical comparison. If it sees it in a set sentence or in a set command or phrase like this, it means it's actually going to be assigning one thing to the other. So when you say set, then it means that you're actually assigning one thing to another. If there's no definition, you just like you need to know what it is. You get clear. Everything in DB, in MySQL script, you actually have to tell it almost at the beginning what you do. I understand it. You don't just have the variable name. The language is designed in a way that almost everything, there's a keyword that starts, so you know what you're doing. So when you say declare, you know that it's a variable. So you expect to see a variable name in the file. say set, you know that. It's actually very similar. They just use similar phrases. So if they set something equals nothing, just that one is going to be database. This is for a file. Alright, so let's run this one. So run. Okay, so I've run this. If I want to run it again, it's going to fail, right? Because it already exists. Oh, sorry. So I will need to drop this. So for those of you who need to recreate a function, alright. The other thing that confuses people is where does this function exist? This function does not exist in your workbench. This function exists in the database management system, right? So if someone else connected to MySQL from another interface, so I'm now switching to command prompt 64 and alright, so I've connected to MySQL from command prompt. He has no idea that someone is working from workbench, right? And if he decides he wants to use the database, what was it called? Okay, test canteen. Right, that means now I'm using it. I can say select. The name of the function was called my addition. Is it because I've already created it? My addition. Okay, I've created it again. So now it's actually working. So the function you created, once you actually run it, you run the query command, it is no more in your text editor. It's been sent and stored in the database management. Same as the table, you go to the table. And that's what I meant by once you find a function, every time, yeah, so I just called the function from command prompt. Select the 1020. Yes, I put the 1020 in here. So 100, 200. That's it. So the code doesn't exist within the workbench. They are just often students would save this for future use, maybe Control S and then save it somewhere. So let me just save 2013. So this is test canteen functions.sql. And this is my creation script, which I'm going to call test canteen create.sql. Alright, so is everyone okay with at least how to create a function? You can access the function, yes. Though keep in mind that the functions you have definers. So in this case, sorry, you need to refresh. If you are using a very new version of the workbench, it automatically does refreshing and all of that. So you can see the function is here, my addition, and if you alter routine, you can actually see. So there is a definer. So when there's someone connected, so you can connect multiple times anyway. So if you have an application and they are all connected as a user that's created this, you can actually access and use the function. If you need to alter the function, if you are using the user interface, nice user interface like this, you can make changes, let's say +10, apply. But note that even when I apply, it has to what? Drop the function before it recreates. So it doesn't just change the code. It actually overwrites it. It's just like a file, and you say anytime I save, you delete the old one and you recreate it. So that's what it's actually doing. So it has the same effect of modifying. So you delete the old one, that's the drop, and then recreates it. Okay, so at least now you can make simple functions that do arithmetic operations. Right. Now let's create our first function, or our first interesting function that works directly with the tables. Right. So first function, we're going to write a function that inserts customers. Right. So a customer has a username and full name, and that means when I'm designing my function, so create function customer create, I have to take into account what I pass in as parameters. So those of you who are designing tables, usually when you are creating a function, you have to ask yourself what parameters are required. To create a customer, I need what? Username and full name. So I'm going to take username and full name. So those are the parameters. So username, full name. It does not matter the spacing. You can put them on separate lines. I like to separate them out so I can tell returns. Okay. So I like to separate my things out, but some people think that the open close bracket for the create is a separate function. This is not a declaration of the function. It's just parameters. Things that you pass when you are calling the function. So I'm going to now do a simple insertion. So insert into customer. Username, full name, values. No, it doesn't know. It knows what is in the table, so it knows that customer has username and full name. But as for function, you get to declare your own parameters. You can, yes, you can try and insert. So that's why you can see I actually copied the types here as well. So I make sure that when I'm inserting, it inserts the right thing with the right thing. No expiry. Yes, if you make a mistake, you won't correct it. Okay, so that means that we have a value. So in future, you will continue to the MySQL. So I can. So it's good. It's good that she has these ideas. That why didn't you do it automatically? Why didn't you do it automatically? Right. But unfortunately, as it is now, it's very strict. Meaning that it requires a type. It's strongly typed. You must specify any variable type. Okay, so strongly typed. This will insert data. Alright, and it's also going to return an int. Okay, one thing I've forgotten. Hey, where is? Right. So I've forgotten the last insert ID. I believe there is a function called last insert ID, which should be able to tell us. Let me try it and see. Yeah, there is a function like this. Okay, so if you run a command, for example, insert into customer, username and full name, values, let's say KG or Safomafo, Joe. Right. So if I run this function. Sorry, I run this instruction. It's done an insertion. If I want to know the last thing I inserted, the ID, last insert ID gives it to me. This happens in PHP as well. In PHP, you may have just inserted some data. You want to use the what? The ID for what you just inserted in the next sequence. You can use last insert ID, but they must follow each other. I follow. You do an insertion. You can don't do another. Let's say after I do insert customer, if I do insert into menu, if I ask for last ID, it will give me what I did for the menu. I understand. Even though I'm working customer, if I do another insertion, it will just be for the last insert I did. So if I do a bunch of customer insertions and I do a menu insertion and I ask for last ID, the last ID will check and see what was the last insertion I did. So if the last one was a menu, it will give me menu. You lose the ID if you do several insertions. So if you need that ID, grab it and use it before you proceed. So that means in my sequence, so in this case, if I wanted to return the inserted ID, I'll have to do, first of all, I'll declare a variable for it. This is just clean coding, customer ID, which is an int. And I'll say set customer ID is equal to last insert ID, return customer ID. So this function would actually run and return to you an ID of someone you just inserted. So it's been created now, and I'll add the drop just to be consistent. Right, so that I can always drop all and create all. Yep. Okay. Question. Why are we doing it in different tabs? Okay, so as I said before, the tabs doesn't really matter. I was just using this to demonstrate. So remember, anytime you run a command, it doesn't really matter what tab you did it in. It would still go to the same database management system, the one that you're currently using. So just for organization, I'm just putting all my creation in one place, all my functions in one place, and all my commentary in another place. So it's just to keep it separated. So all my functions at the end of the day, I'm hoping, will be in one file that I can give out. Alright, so now we've created an insertion script, very nice script. And I'm going to test this out. Have a question? Yes, so whenever you run an insertion command, there is a global variable that MySQL keeps track of the last thing that you inserted, the last ID that was used for insertion. So it can be any table at all. Last insert ID works for any table. So it's just a function you always call if you want to know the ID that someone just inserted before you. Are you understanding? Right, so if I'll actually use the same thing when I do for the menu. But let's test this one before we make a function for the menu. Right. So in this case, I'm create a function that would declare an ID doesn't exist yet, insert into a customer, and then get that customer ID and put into customer ID. Now let me go to the next page to test it out. So select, so new person, new usernames, other people. Bozo. Okay, alright. Okay, so it is posting. Is it with a DZI? Okay, I don't know who Pozo is, but so I'll call him said Pozo. Okay. So Pozo, and please note how I'm actually calling the function. I'm using select and then passing the parameters in code, in string. So it's actually known as a string. So let's run this and see. Okay, so it's saying that Sekozo is ID number 2. Right. And I can actually try this out. If I do select star from customer where ID is equal to 2, I just get Sekozo back. Oh, I only run, please note when I'm running, in this case, I use execute current. I don't execute everything with them. No, select is just to say do some work for me. I think the way MySQL was designed, the word select is a little bit of a misnomer. So it says you hear select, but it doesn't always mean you're selecting from a table. In this case, I'm selecting, but I'm getting from a function. So whatever the function does, it will be a side effect. So I can have a select. So select, that is actually calling a function that will do a deletion. This function does a creation. So in this case, this select statement is calling a function, and that function is then intending the insertion. So the function, what it does is actually going to be what the select ends up doing. Most people think of select for getting data from tables, but if there are functions that do other things, a select can have other side effects. Right, so in this case, this select is calling a function that is going to end up with creating a new customer. So that means that there are two ways of creating customers. Or you can write functions. Function, you can do all the SQL commands in the functions. So, well, at least most of them anyway. There are a few that will not work, but a lot of them you can do within functions. Are people understanding? So that was actually an interesting question I had for you last time. Right, but the thing is, functions, it does add all the modularity, all those nice engineering terms that we add to software. Though you don't have to use MySQL functions. I know if you listen to the video and say, so someone said not to. I know some people are also just using simple PHP. But as part of learning of DBMSes, this is just completing your knowledge. You can create tables, you can also create functions with the SQL script to make code that runs on the database management system side. But you can also do the same thing with PHP. Right. You just write the function, take the parameters, you create a string, and then you call MySQL query, and you pass the command in. So this is just in one location. Everyone who connects can run the same thing. It's easier that way. Right. So your knowledge of creating functions here is actually born directly of your knowledge of programming. So it's, as when we are programming, we know, of course, if I wanted to, even if we're PHP, to write a function that creates a new customer, I need these two things. Because I have these two fields in my table. So my function has those two. So I can pass it and it creates for me. So in that sense, your knowledge of programming does inform you on how to create your function parameters. We had a question, and then I wanted to return to you the ID of what I just did. So in case you needed it for something, you can use it. Now we are going to modify. Yours is not inserting. Okay, so insertion is nice, but sometimes you want to do a few things before you insert. Maybe check some conditions before you do an insertion. For example, it would be nice to make sure that usernames are not too short. Right. Those are some of the requirements in accessing in terms of the length of the username and such, or that full names are not blank and so on. It's possible to do these checks. Right. So I could simply have a simple check. So for example, if p_full name is now, then return now. telling the user that if you give me a full name, that is now, I won't even get to the insertion statement. I'll just immediately break out. So you can use if else's to add some checks into your code. Or if username, if length of username is less than, let's say 2 characters, or let me use 3 characters, then return now. So you can have a few checks. So this is what error is this? Near semicolon. Oh, sorry. And if. And if. Alright, so there's the if and if, right, which you can use. And as you can see from this, I'm just checking if your full name is now, then you return now. And if your length is less than 3, you return now. Meaning that you cannot create users who do not have reasonable usernames. This is an oversimplification. So in this case, for example, I'm saying if, let's say, I try to create a user whose username is just 1 character, maybe X Costello, right? If I try and run this, oh, unknown column username, it should be P username, not just username. So please note, in this context, at this point in time, it doesn't know what username means. If I were writing a select or insert statement, it knows that username is one of the columns in the customer table. But if it has not gotten to that line, it doesn't know about it. Right? And it will only know about username on this line. If I just put username here or after, it won't know. So in that statement, it has to make sense. Unless for things that are declared, such as customer ID or things that are parameters. Right. So let's run this again, and Costello, let's try Costello. So you see Costello, when I run, returns me with now, because it's actually checking to see if this is of a certain length. Now, some of you have seen error codes in some software where Windows returns to you some error codes. So coding practice, you can have a program that returns to you some negative number, -2. So I think you've seen it in MySQL manual. Sometimes it gives you an error code number, and then you have to go and look it up and see what does this error code mean. Like I said, 2, 3, or 4, 400. So all those are just return values from functions. That is passed to the user. And then the person who makes the mama will say, when you use my program or software and it returns to you this code, this is what it means. So in this case, -2 is the username is less than 2. If we're -1, or P underscore full name. Alright, so I'm also trying to handle the empty full names. If you pass me a full name, that is not proper. Right, so someone tries to not give me a full name. Oh, I keep making spelling mistakes. Full name. That was with this customer crate with somebody who doesn't use a full name. -1, telling me that it has actually been triggered by this one. So you can actually do a few if else checks before any action happens. Yes, you can. But what do I have to change before you can return string? I have to change my return type. So whatever your return type is, it's what you have to return. If it's, say I want to return int and you return a string, it will be an error. And if I'm expecting to return strings, ints can often be put into strings. But strings cannot easily be put into ints. So just be careful with how you return variables. The variable must match the return type. Okay, so this is a simple function that is using insertion. Let's add another one. Say it again. I can't hear you. Yours is also not inserting. Okay, so we are going to add functions that will create a menu item, right? So for the menu, I need to specify the weekday, the name, and the nickname, right? So just 3 things in order to create a menu item. So for my menu, weekday is a car. We have name and nickname as well, right? So those are the things that I need to pass to my function. Right. So this would be menu ID. Right. Insert into menu weekday name nickname. Weekday name I make a menu ID and then I return a menu ID. So I've just created this function as well. I'm going to test it out. Menu create with weekday name and a nickname. Select, for example, Monday. So I'm going to use Monday M. Say rice and stew. Rice and stew is the nickname. Right. So let's run this. So that's the first item created. Right. And if I go to my menu, I do have rice and stew created. Okay. So I'd like to make some changes to the weekday code. Right. So I'm just inserting, but I very much like to check that the weekday is one of MW and so on. So here, I'm just going to check if P weekday is equal to M. So M is for Monday, or a lot of copying and pasting involved here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, we only do canteen. Do they do Saturdays and Sundays? Okay, so so Monday is M, Tuesday is T, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But there is a small problem, so I'll show you how often this is handled. So since there are 2 Tuesday, Thursday, often we replace it with the second car. So this is just like conflict resolution. Yeah, but it's not just courseware. It happens for a lot of systems where if you are just assigning single letter code, if there's a conflict, then you have to pick the next character. And if someone has that one, you have to pick the next character, and so on. Yes, so Sunday will be Saturday. That means they're just using a different resolution mechanism. But this is the most common one that I know, where you just pick. The thing, I know why someone pick that. But this one is, okay, so in this case, that means that you will be Sunday. Right. This is also very confusing because what if S was the Sunday, the Thursday of the week? Yeah. We're only using one character, so okay, so we'll just use S for the Sunday as the first day of the week, according to a lot of religions. And then okay, so this time I'm rearranging my code a bit where I have an if-else block. Alright, so I check if your day of the week is a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. I take whatever you have and I use it for insertion. So that means I want something that's good, right? Similar to the other one, I can do checks for the name. For example, if name is now, then I can return now. That can be a good check. End it. Or if name is empty, then I can return now. Of course, I could return specific code so you know why I'm returning the error. So for example, -3, you know what's going on. Nickname is another one. If nickname is now, then return -3. Oh, sorry, history already. Just a sec, please. And I guess people are asking about the else, right? Else if nickname is, then return -5. Okay, so I need to drop this menu, create this menu. I think it's the else if, yes. So when it's else if this way, you have to do else if. It's kind of annoying, but in this case it's one word. So you can do else if, or if ended, if ended. So right now I'm actually doing checks to make sure that the name is provided and the nickname is also provided. Right. I'm going to change my menu a bit. Just going to alter it and remove the uniqueness requirement for the nickname, because I've realized that we can have rights on 2 or 3 days, so I cannot make it unique anymore. So I've left the name alone and left the nickname alone. Right. So I'm going to change my create script a bit to allow me to have the same food occurring on different days. So let me now test my code. So I want to do rice and stew. Let's try it. Alright, column name, unknown column name in field list. Okay, people know why that's an error, right? So why is that an error here? Alright, so that's the reason. I made the same mistake earlier. Okay, so all my parameters were prefixed with P. So I'm just going to put P across all. Alright. And alright, so I've been able to create on Monday rice and stew again. Right. Now this is why I would say then functions can be very useful, because it means what? I can write some code that can do some text before putting rice and stew on the table. Because I run another insertion. It would have been nice if the function could do the check. So those who are asking why do you like functions, these are some of the reasons you like them. That means that the function can do all the necessary checks. So in this case, it would have been nice if my function could check to see if that food had already been recorded for that day. Right. So I'm going to do a simple check. So first I'm going to declare a variable that would hold how many things. So food count as an integer. Now, to count how many times the food has occurred, if I were writing my own code, I would have written something like select count star from menu, where the name of the food is equal to rice and stew. Right. And this would tell me how many times that has been used. Select count star. Right. I can use this in my function as well. So copy it, put in my function. That means before my insertion, I have to do this query. Right. So I'm going to do this query. But select statements, when you are using it in a function, it's not tied to a terminal. Right. So anytime you're doing a selection, the data has to be stored somewhere. This means select count star, data has to be stored somewhere. And that means I have to have a variable. So in this case, this is food count. like this into food counts. So for those who are wondering, how do I get data from a query into a variable? That's how you do it. Yes, that means that people are no more going to listen to me at all. Okay, so yes, it is 40 minutes. I don't like to make very long videos. Okay, so I'm now also going to select always write and stream. The value is coming from where? P name. So I'll put it here. P name. Right. Is this thing always going to work? What's this actually going to mean for the code? Is this a good way to check that the food doesn't happen on the same day? So what would it mean? I need to check the weekday as well. Right. So this is actually just one thing. Alright. So I'm going to play a few tricks before I actually insert the weekday. I'm going to set P weekday equal to upper P weekday. This is just in case someone forgets to make the weekday capital. It will be sad if someone does a lowercase m and then I reject it. So what I'm doing is, whatever parameter I got, I'm changing it, making it uppercase. Right. The second thing that I would like to do, so there's a function called proper. Oh, someone is really stretching. No. You said? Even though you use my code? Wow. Her code is not giving her problems. Okay, so I was looking for the proper function. There's a function that can make things uppercase in the right places, like a name. The first character is, because I think I've forgotten the name of the function. So I'm going to proceed without it so we can finish quickly. But I've just changed my select count star so that I'm finding the name of the item and the weekday. So that if it's Monday, I check that Monday that food hasn't occurred again. So you don't make a mistake. So that is what this is doing now. Now I've done the check, I need to say if food count is greater than 0, then that means that the food already exists. Right? It exists on that day. You return the positive count. I'll return -6. End it. The numbers are actually based on where I'm coming out from. When I see an error here, I return -1, here -2, -3, -4. So I can tell what type of error it is. So I'm just using that as my error code. I can always keep returning now, but it is recording. I don't think that is the best. If you're going to return string, just make sure that your return type here is varchar. Then you can return varchar or something as well. Okay, so back to this. Let us now test Monday rice and stew. -6. Because it's okay, so let's do something. Rice and what? That's jollof. So jollof and stew. So let's do jollof and stew for the Monday. That worked just fine. They returned a positive number. So jollof and stew went in. Because there's no jollof and stew currently in the database. So one was the nickname and one was the proper name. Alright, so I hope people at least understand how you can use the checks before you do insertion. Okay, we are going to do an interesting one, which is to place an order. Right. So in order to make an order of a certain food, what we'd like to do is to create a simple function. Why so much noise right now? Don't worry, we'll end soon, but I just want to at least have one sort of little product, something that works. So in order to make an order for food, we usually ask the person for the username, right? So we'll say maybe p username. Let's see what the username type was. Username was okay, varchar20, right? So that means if I know your username, which is your varchar20, and I know the food, the name of the food. This is menu create. Oh, where is it? Okay, here, which is p name. So I'm going to say, if I know this, the name of the food, so I'll call this food name. And the last thing is I need to know the day of the week. Oh, sorry, thanks. Okay, so now I have a few things. So the username, the food, and the weekday. Why it's time up? That's why people are itching. Oh, come on. So return off. Okay. Now this is a function that is actually very interesting because I'm taking the username, but based on the username, I don't want the user to have to worry and say I have to go and find the ID first. So within this function, I will find the ID of the username. Within this function, I'll find the ID of the name and the food name, and then do the insertion within the food order database. Oh, sorry, the food order table. Right. So that means I'm going to do two selections, but I need to have variables that will return to me the IDs. So I'm going to have one variable, declare, let's say, customer ID int. That's my first one. Declare menu ID int. So that's two of them. First one is to select, select ID. The customer table, if I remember, has an ID. So select the ID for that thing into customer ID from customer, where username is equal to p underscore username. So this will return to me that customer. Alright. The menu is similar. So return ID from that menu table into, I have a menu ID from alright. So now I have two of them, right? One for the customer, one for the ID. Alright. And the other thing, I wrote some if else's here for the day of the week. So I'm just going to steal that code, bring it here. Alright. I'm going to use a not. So I'm going to say if your weekday is not one of these, return -2. I use -1 for when you come out here. So I'm just using. Yes, so if you call the function and return the number, so that means for that function you know what the different code means. Okay, so the thing with this is, I believe there is a way for some of the interfaces to print data to screen. Though often the way that functions are used, I guess I didn't. Okay, robotics is starting. Okay, so I did not pay attention to those. There are ways to send commands to console and so on. But usually when functions are running, usually you just want to get the last return and send it to whatever language is calling it. So I believe there is a way, but I don't know how to do that. You can make it print useful information. So -1 would say no, nothing found, and so on. Okay, so I know the time is up, but let's finish this one. Right, let's finish this one. So this is okay. I think we've compiled it. Okay, so let's drop this. Sorry. My cursor is behaving. Drop. Okay, I think I've dropped it too many times. And then create. Okay, so I'm going to test this out. So this food create. Come on. So I'm now here. So select food create, took a username, a page or for a food like rice and stew, a day of the week, let's say Wednesday. Just a sec, I think I ran everything. Okay, so this is returning to me -1. So -1 actually from here actually corresponded to this. So actually it went through. It didn't return -2. It means it got everything. Finally returned -1. Okay, so now I can finish this off. So this is actually insert. Oh, there's actually the menu ID. Oh, sorry, this is the right place. Okay. I think I deleted something. I deleted searching for the menu. Sorry about this. I'll finish this right now. So this is p_name, and weekday equals to p_weekday, so that I get the right menu item. Okay. And then if all of this, thank you. Mouse. Okay, I now see how come that problem happened. What's happening to my mouse? Come stick. Okay, so finally I will insert into food order. I need a customer ID. I need a menu ID. Time ordered and date ordered are going to be created by themselves. But I can, for example, add date ordered values. Okay, I don't want to cause confusion with the customer ID, menu ID. So I've renamed those variables with v_customer ID, v_menu ID. And I'm going to put them into here, customer ID, menu ID. Sorry. So that will do the insertion, v_customer ID, v_menu ID. Date ordered. So I actually call a function to help you with the insertion, and then I'll just return last insert ID. I'm in a hurry, that's why I didn't even store it as another variable. So hopefully all of this would work. Okay, everything else run. Okay, so it's returned 1. Okay, so let me select star from food order. Actually, there's an error in this. And the error being the menu ID is now. Right, and that's because it didn't find menu item for W, rice and stew. I can actually go back to the code and make changes. Okay, if I make this an M and run it. Oh, result considered of more than one row. It is because of that error in the beginning where I inserted two rice and stews for Monday. Right, so let's solve that problem. When you actually select into something, if it returns more than one value, it would actually cause an exception to be thrown. And to combat that, I mean, it's good if your database can run without this limit. So your design in the very beginning, I should not have inserted two rice and stew for Monday, and then this would have been just fine. But I have already violated the rules, so now I'm sort of patching my code to make it run. So Monday, sorry, run my Monday code. Okay, so it's now 2. Run my Monday code 3. Okay, and let's see what's in there. So you see now, it actually went in, picked the customer, picked this. There was also another customer called Tozo. Assuming Tozo has come right now. Tozo, I hope it's spelled properly. Alright, so I've run for Tozo, and so you can see Tozo picks the customer in 2, menu ID 1. So you can actually do a lot of these. I can even do jollof and stew. So run, that's fine. Alright, so you can see it's actually picking. The only thing that remains, so there's one more check. What do I have to check now? The menu. I have to make sure that the customer ID and menu ID are both positive integers before I actually go ahead and use it. So that would be the last thing. So if customer ID less than or equal to 0 or menu ID less than or equal to 0, then I'll just return minus or so that means that the moment I finish inserting a food item, it will take that ID. So when I call this, it will give me that ID. Okay, so now to test this finally, if I do with jollof and stew for Wednesday, do we have jollof and stew? Let's try it and see. Unknown column, customer ID. Sorry, it should be V customer. Sorry. And V menu ID. Run all. Hey, how come I... Oh no, it's still going in. I think there's an error somewhere. It's time for... Yes, okay. So it's time for your next class. Enjoy yourselves. I'll put up the code so you can all try. Yes, and the video as well. Take it out, yeah. Sorry about that.
The way is we are still in this lab. We're supposed to be next door, but because this is here, there's no one else here.
Hello, Mama.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sorry. So you see, I need free classroom. The budget season.